Cocaine. There's never a happy ending. You either die, go to jail, or run out. For Cory Fenn, it ended in rage and a triple homicide. A mother and her 13-year-old daughter, stabbed to death, her 14-year-old son, strangled. Is cocaine to blame? Or was Cory a ticking time bomb? Or was it a chain reaction of substance abuse, sleep deprivation, and the mind of a narcissist? Before we begin, I'd like to reach out and thanking everyone who subscribed and liked my videos. It really does mean the world to me. And for those of you who are new, I welcome you. Here you'll find I try to post content 2 to 3 times a week. All based on true crime, but narrated in first person. Giving you the viewers, a more in-depth experience to some of the world's most afflicted victims. I would like to warn you now, these stories can be difficult at times to withstand. We feel it's important to not hold back in giving you a true understanding to these heinous crimes. So please, make yourself comfortable, as we begin.
My mother always had the worst taste in men. A lot of it had to do with her upbringing. I know she loved us very much, but when you don't respect yourself, most times, you're not going to attract the right people. This was the case with Cory Fenn. From the outside he looked like a regular person, attractive, went to the gym, had a great smile. I remember the day my mom introduced him to us. First impressions, we thought he seemed nice. But with my mother's past taste in men, we honestly didn't think he'd be in the picture for long. Little did we know, neither would we. They had been going off and on for just over a year. Most of the time my sisters and I would try to avoid him. You see, Cory liked to use cocaine, and whenever we saw him, we never knew which side of Cory he brought home. For the most part, he was always full of smiles. But that quite often changed if he was on a binge or ran out. My mother would always end up taking the abuse. We pleaded with our mom to break up with him. That he was no good for her. Honestly, I feel she had low self-esteem, and that's why she ignored the signs. It was maybe 2 weeks ago, my sister and I waited for Cory to leave for the gym. We both then sat down and had a long talk with our mom. We were tired of the arguing and seeing her cry. He had left cocaine all over the kitchen counter. This was our home. Our mother wasn't perfect, but she didn't deserve that, and neither did we. At first she tried to defend him, as would most mentally abused women. But my sister and I had enough and told her that we would move out if he didn't. We were sick of the drugs, the never knowing. We even threatened to move out. Our mom finally agreed. She was going to tell Cory he had to go. We were so proud of her. She needed this. We needed this. My sister Victoria was still angry over the whole situation and still went to her dad's for the night. If only she could have taken me and my younger sister. That evening when Cory came home, he was in a really weird mood. Honestly, it looked like he hadn't slept for days and he was doing this thing with his jaw. I could just tell he wasn't going to take it lightly being kicked out. My mom had ordered some supper and my little sister and I took it to my room and closed the door. I could hear her footsteps going downstairs to the basement apartment where Cory was staying. I was so nervous for her. He was a big man and was really intimidating. I couldn't hear anything. I wasn't sure if she told him yet, but then I could hear this stupid laugh of his and heard which sounded like the kitchen table sliding across the floor. My mother kept saying,
"What are you doing? Stop this."
He didn't take it well, as we thought he wouldn't. I had begun to open my door ajar as I could begin to hear them yelling at each other. Things were being broken, as I could hear my mom pleading for him to stop. I looked back at my little sister and told her I'll be right back. I stepped out and looking for my mom's cell phone. I wanted to call the cops. His temper had escalated to where I now feared for my mom. Unfortunately, I couldn't find her phone and went back in my room to check on my sister. It was then I could hear my mother.
"Please don't. I beg you. You can stay."
It was at that point Cory had picked up a kitchen knife and lunged forward and piercing my mother in the chest. I could hear the sound of his fist hitting her chest with every blow. It went silent. I wasn't sure what was going on. I stayed in my room with my sister, trying to listen to anything. About 20 minutes go by and I begun to hear footsteps coming up the stairs. I knew it wasn't my mother as Cory was a much bigger man and the steps creaked a certain way. I was watching from the opening of my door. It was Cory, but covered in blood. I knew right there and then, my mother was dead. This fucking prick killed my mom. Just as I went to close my bedroom door, it made a sound. I froze on the spot. Cory was now looking directly at me. I noticed he was holding a knife. We're just kids. He wouldn't kill us. I kept telling myself. It was then he proceeded towards me. I quickly shut the door and locked it. I could hear Cory. "Open the door, Roy. Your mom needs you. She's okay, but she tripped and fell and asked me to come get you." His voice was different, like he was scared. I just took my little sister and hid behind my bed. Cory was starting to lose his patience. "If you don't open this door, I'm going to kick it down." The concern for my mother was now lost in his voice. I just hugged Vanilla and told her I loved her. She was crying, shaking as she began to hold me tight. We both knew what was about to happen. Cory began to kick the door, once, twice, and finally it opened. He stood there in the doorway staring at us. "Why didn't you open the door?" He was fucked. His pupils were tiny black specks. His lower jaw kept twitching, covered in blood from head to toe, but acting like nothing happened. It was then he started walking around the bed towards us. I grabbed my sister's hand and jumped over my bed. He had grabbed her. Using his hand, he smacked me across the mouth. I had let go of Vanilla's hand and fell to the floor. By the time I was able to get on my feet, Cory was already stabbing my sister. Over and over again. "Why would you do this? I fucking hate you." He was holding her up by her hair, while holding the blade still inside her. He looked at me. I was so angry that I just ran towards him. I had nothing to lose. My mother and sister were now dead. I jumped on top of him, wrapping my arms around his neck. He had dropped the knife and begun spinning around, using my bedroom wall to run at. My head bounced off the dresser and blood started pouring over my eyes. I lost control of my surroundings. I was in shock and now dazed. Cory then used both of his hands and begun lifting me off the ground by my neck. "This is your mother's fucking fault. That fucking bitch thinks she can kick me out." I was gasping for air. That feeling of having the wind knocked out of you, but knowing it's never coming back. It was then Cory had stolen my life. Breathless in his hands as he then threw me to the floor. He then walked into the kitchen and sat down where he put out another line. Mumbling gibberish as he kept smacking the table with his fist. It wasn't until the next morning that anyone begun to have an idea that something was wrong. My mother's boss, Sherry, had tried several times in contacting her as she hadn't showed up for work. Sherry was concerned and had made her way over. She knocked on the door. Cory opened the door. Nothing to say, but giving a cold stare. Sherry had noticed there was blood on his arms and feet. She knew something terrible had happened. She had asked if she could come in and speak with Pedzanovsky, my mother. Cory looked at her and told her no and simply closed the door. Sherry then went back into her car and pulled out her phone and called the police. They had made a horrifying discovery. My mother Pedzanovsky, my 13-year-old sister, Vanilla, and myself. All found dead within our home. Cory was then arrested the same evening, hiding in an ex-girlfriend's shed. He confessed to police the next day to killing all of us, but claimed he didn't remember what happened due to cocaine-induced psychosis after a 5-day binge. On February the 10th, the Superior Court Justice Howard Leibovich found Cory Fenn guilty of 3 counts of second-degree murder, rejecting his claim that he lacked the state of mind to commit murder.